He said he would send our mother to a nursing home if I didn't give him the money. I had never heard anything more cruel in my life. I still remember the feeling like I'd been punched in the gut when I heard what Damien said. We were standing in the middle of the kitchen, and it must have been around 10 o'clock at night. The sun had long set and I had just gotten home from work. A truly terrible day at the office where I work as a financial analyst, and all I wanted was a hot shower and some quiet. But Damien, my younger brother, was waiting for me, and his face looked like he hadn't slept in a week. He's 32, I'm 35. This whole situation with our parents, especially with Mom, had been hanging over us like a black cloud for a year now. I should start a little earlier so you understand how we got here. Our father, Richard, passed away a year ago, and it wasn't just a blow, it was a complete collapse for all of us, but especially for our mother, Evelyn. She already had health issues related to her heart, but after Dad passed, it only got worse. It's not that she needed round-the-clock medical care, but she required constant help around the house, reminders for her medication, and most importantly, someone nearby. Damien and I immediately gave each other our word. The family home was her home until the very end. No nursing homes. That was taboo, our main family vow that we'd even promised our father. The problem is we both have our own lives. I live in a different neighborhood, working from dawn till dusk just to pay my own mortgage. Damien. Well, he's always been more of a free spirit, as he calls himself. He works as a freelance designer. Money comes and goes, but the debts are always there. We agreed that he would move in with Mom for a month while we looked for a caregiver. Then we'd take turns. Finding a caregiver was difficult. The good ones are expensive, and we couldn't bring ourselves to hire a bad one. We finally found a woman, Mrs. Patterson, with excellent references, but her services cost a lot. $1,500 a week. That's just beyond our means, especially mine. I called Damien, said we needed to discuss how we were going to split that sum, because even if I paid 2/3, it would still bankrupt me. He replied, "Don't worry, I'll figure something out, just come over after work." So I came. He was sitting at the table, turning an empty coffee mug in his hands. When I asked what he had figured out, he didn't look up. He started by talking about himself. He said that during this month he was living with Mom. His own business had completely fallen apart. Clients had left, bills weren't paid. He said it wasn't just a financial hole but a catastrophe. And that right at this moment, as luck would have it, a problem was discovered with his left kidney. Not just inflammation but something serious requiring immediate surgery. American medicine, you know what that's like. He doesn't have good insurance. Without looking at me, he named the amount needed for the surgery. $40,000. I just froze. $40,000. I didn't have that kind of money even if I sold my car. But I knew I had something else. My small investment account, which I had been saving for the down payment on a bigger apartment. There was about $30,000 in there. My savings, my safety net, my dreams. I started to explain to him that this was almost everything I owned, that I couldn't just give it away, that we had to find another way, a loan, something. And then he looked up. His eyes were red, and I saw in them not despair, but something cold, something I had never seen before. He clenched his fists. That's when he said the words that burned through my mind and heart simultaneously. "Listen, Catherine. I don't have time to wait. The surgery needs to happen now. You give me those $30,000, and I'll somehow get the rest. If you don't, I promise you, I'll take Mom's documents tomorrow and drive her to the nearest state-run nursing home. You know how she'll take that. You know what we promised her. But I'll do it. Because I need to live. And if you don't give me the money, I won't survive myself, and we can't afford the caregiver anyway. So this is the only way out for all of us. You save me, and I save Mom from where she never wanted to go." That's when I felt like I'd been hit. He used Mom, our promise, our biggest sore spot, as leverage. He blackmailed me with our deceased father, our sick mother, and our unbreakable word. It was the most cynical and cruel thing I had ever heard from my own brother. In 1 second he stopped being my brother and became a stranger, dangerous. And I realized I had just 1 month to either lose all my savings or lose Mom, maybe forever. The look in his eyes wasn't despair. It was calculation. He was already planning what to do with Mom's paperwork. I stood there staring at him, feeling the blood drain from my face. My first thought wasn't about the money. It was a bizarre, clinical assessment of him. Is this who he really is? Damien, my little brother who I used to cover for when he snuck out, who I taught to drive, who cried on my shoulder when his first serious girlfriend left him. The person standing across from me now was a predator, using the one thing he knew I valued above everything else, Mom's peace, to get what he wanted. You're not serious, Damien, I finally managed to whisper, and my voice cracked so badly it barely sounded like mine. You don't mean that. You promised, Dad. You promised me. He didn't flinch. He just leaned back slightly and gave me this tight, almost weary look. Promises don't pay for emergency surgery, Kath. And promises certainly don't change the fact that Mom needs someone here. And she needs medication and we don't have a plan B, do we? You're talking about a loan. How long will that take? A week? 2? I need this surgery now. Every day I wait, the risks get higher. And honestly, I've been sitting here with her for a month, watching her fade a little more every day. The guilt is killing me. If I die because I waited for you to find a different way, who takes care of her then? It's all on you. He spun the narrative so fast, trying to make me the villain, that it made my head spin. He was painting this impossible picture. If he died, it was my fault and Mom would suffer anyway. If I paid, he lived and Mom stayed safe. A sick, twisted logic. The next few days were a blur of cold silence and mounting tension. I didn't give him an answer immediately. I couldn't. I told him I needed to process it, to check my accounts, to talk to my financial advisor, anything to buy time. He just nodded, but his eyes followed me everywhere. He was waiting. I couldn't sleep. I would wake up at 3 a.m., drenched in sweat, seeing the sterile, sad hallway of a nursing home in my mind. Mom Evelyn was never meant for that. She was a woman of gardens and sunlight, not fluorescent lights and strangers. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped, convinced it was him, telling me he had already done it. I did call my financial advisor, John. I just told him I had a massive, unexpected family emergency and needed access to the capital immediately. I couldn't bring myself to tell him the real reason. 30,000, Kate? Are you sure? That's your security blanket, he warned. I just said, I have to, John. No choice. The paperwork to liquidate the account was signed, and I was told the funds would be available in a week. 1 week. That felt like a countdown to disaster. Meanwhile, I went to see Mom. She was sitting in the living room, knitting a blanket that she'd probably never finish, looking frail but still so present. I spent an hour with her, just holding her hand. She talked about the roses in the backyard. She didn't talk about Damien's presence, or the fact that Dad was gone, but the silence between her words was heavy with both. I kept looking at her, thinking, is this the last time I see her here in her own chair? Damien was there too. He was annoyingly attentive to her, bringing her tea, adjusting her pillows. It was all a performance, I knew, but it made me doubt myself. What if he was truly desperate? What if the kidney thing was real, and his desperation had just pushed him over the edge? People do crazy things when they're staring at death. I tried to look up his doctor, his clinic, anything, but he'd only ever mention it vaguely. He said he was going for appointments at a place I'd never heard of way downtown, claiming they offered a better, cheaper procedure. It was all too hazy, too convenient. Then, for days after our initial confrontation, I was back at their place to drop off groceries. Damien met me at the door. He didn't even say hello. He looked past me, his expression flat. I called the Golden Pines facility today, he said, his voice low and devoid of emotion. They have an immediate opening. I told them Mom might need a bed by the end of the week. I need to know, Kate. Yes or no? The money or the application goes in tomorrow. It wasn't a threat anymore. It was an ultimatum delivered with terrifying calm. He had already taken the first step. The paperwork wasn't just a leverage point. It was a physical action he had already prepared for. The thought of those applications, Mom's name next to Golden Pines, made my stomach clench. He was calling my bluff, but I wasn't bluffing. This was real. And suddenly a week felt like too long. I needed to know the truth about his surgery, and I needed to know it now. His calm demeanor when he mentioned Golden Pines was what broke me. It wasn't the desperate plea of a sick man. It was the cold leverage of a negotiator. He had crossed a line, and now he was just waiting for me to surrender. You called them. I spat the words out. You actually called a home? After everything we promised? He just shrugged, adjusting the collar of his worn t-shirt. I told you, Kate. I'm out of options. You have 30 grand sitting there doing nothing important. My life is important. Mom is important. This is the only way to save both of us. Save us. I stepped closer, my voice rising. I didn't care if Mom heard us from the living room. I was too angry to care about discretion anymore. You are not saving anyone, Damien. You are extorting me. You are a monster. You are an absolute monster to use Mom's condition, Dad's memory, everything we swore to uphold, just for a bank transfer. And that's when it happened. He didn't get angry, he didn't even get defensive. He threw his head back and let out a short, hollow laugh that grated on my nerves. It was the laugh of someone who knows they hold all the cards. Look at you, Miss Financial Analyst, so high and mighty, he sneered. 30,000 is a drop in the bucket for your new apartment fund. For me it's life or death. But fine. You want conflict? Let's have conflict. He pushed past me and walked towards the living room. My heart stopped. No, he wouldn't tell Mom. He stopped just short of the archway, turned back, and his eyes were burning with pure, calculated malice. You have until the end of the week, Kate. Friday afternoon. If the wire transfer isn't complete, I don't just hand in the application. I tell Mom exactly why she's going. I tell her that her eldest daughter, the responsible one, the successful one, decided her money was more important than her son's life or her own peace. That hit harder than the nursing home threat itself. Mom couldn't handle that kind of emotional weight. The guilt, the shame, the internal conflict, it would genuinely break her heart. This wasn't just about money. It was about protecting Mom from psychological warfare waged by her own son. I spent the next 2 days trying desperately to verify his story. I drove downtown using the vague clinic name he'd given me. It was a sketchy building full of low-rent offices and storefronts. I couldn't find his specialist or his clinic anywhere. When I confronted him about it via text, he replied with one word: HIPAA. He was using privacy laws as a shield, which only made me more suspicious. I needed proof and fast. I went back to Mom's house the next evening while Damien was supposedly out at a pre-op consultation. I knew he was secretive, always hiding his phone and keeping his papers locked away. I went straight to his room. It was messy as usual, but I was looking for medical bills, prescription bottles, anything definitive. I found a worn leather journal tucked under his mattress. I hated myself for crossing this boundary, but I had to know if I was giving up my future for a lie. I flipped through the pages. Most of it was just bad sketches and complaints about clients. Then I found a page near the back, dated 2 weeks ago. It wasn't about a kidney. It was a handwritten note, almost a checklist. Target $40,000. Catherine's savings projected $30,000. Need hook. Max $5,000 already used CC. Sell Dad's watch $5,000? Below the checklist in capital letters was a single chilling phrase that made my hand tremble so much I almost dropped the book. Cruise ship deposit paid by 2 weeks. He wasn't fighting for his life. He was fighting for a vacation. The kidney surgery was a meticulously crafted lie. A lever to pry $30,000 out of me so he could fund some extravagant fantasy he had planned. He had sold our deceased father's watch, a priceless heirloom, and maxed out a credit card, all for this target amount. My chest constricted. The sheer audacity, the cold-blooded manipulation, the way he had weaponized our mother's fragility, it was staggering. I had 7 days until the money was released, and now I had a choice: transfer the funds and watch him sail off, or refuse and watch him destroy Mom emotionally by revealing the reason she had to leave her home. The dilemma wasn't just about money anymore. It was about how to deal with a man who had become pure, calculated poison. Holding that journal, seeing cruise ship deposit paid staring back at me, felt like staring into the dark core of my brother's soul. The shock was immediately replaced by a searing metallic rage. It wasn't just that he was lying about a life-threatening illness, it was that he had used our most sacred promise, our vow to protect Mom, as a shield for his despicable greed. He hadn't just betrayed me. He had defiled everything our family stood for. I quickly photographed the page with the checklist and the cruise deposit on my phone. The journal went back under the mattress, exactly as I had found it. I left the house, my heart hammering against my ribs, planning my next move. The wire transfer for the $30,000 was scheduled for Friday. It was Wednesday. I had less than 48 hours to resolve a situation that had escalated from a family emergency to a high-stakes ethical war. The moral dilemma was brutally clear. Option A: refuse the transfer, expose his lies to him, and face the consequences. He would follow through on his threat, telling Mom that I sacrificed her well-being to keep my savings, thereby ensuring she would feel guilt and shame as she was moved to a state facility. He might be ruined, but Mom would be devastated. Option B: give him the money. Protect Mom from the psychological attack and keep her safe in her home, but allow a vile lie to succeed and give my brother $30,000 for a luxury vacation. I would be bankrupt and he would walk away with zero accountability. I drove around aimlessly for hours, the rage and the fear fighting within me. I kept thinking about that cruise ship deposit. 2 weeks in Baja. While Mom sat at home needing care, he was planning my ties on a deck chair. Then a thought struck me, a harsh, cold, and utterly necessary plan. If I couldn't stop the lie from succeeding immediately, I could ensure the liar didn't profit from it. The goal was no longer just to save my money. It was to neutralize his weapon and ensure Mom's long-term safety, regardless of the cost to myself. I called my bank. I didn't cancel the wire transfer. Instead, I changed the recipient. I couldn't send the money to Damien, but I couldn't risk the wire failing and him executing his threat against Mom on Friday afternoon. I called the excellent caregiver, Mrs. Patterson, the one who charged the prohibitive $1,500 a week. I told her I was ready to hire her full-time, starting immediately. I told her I would pay her first month's salary, $6,000 up front. I asked her if she would be willing to move into Mom's spare bedroom immediately. She was skeptical, but the money was persuasive. Then, I looked at the remaining $24,000 in the liquid funds. I called a family lawyer, a very discreet one, and established a trust fund in Mom's name. This trust was explicitly designated for her future care and living expenses, including medical needs and the ongoing salary for Mrs. Patterson. I transferred the remaining funds, everything I had left, into that trust. The paperwork made it clear that I was the sole contributor and the trustee, but the beneficiary was exclusively Evelyn, my mother. It was ironclad. By Thursday afternoon, Mrs. Patterson was installed in Mom's house. She was professional, kind, and Mom genuinely liked her instantly. I told Damien that I had made a decision, and that the money would be transferred on Friday as promised. I didn't mention the journal or the cruise. Friday morning, the day of the deadline, I went back to Mom's house. Damien was pacing, twitchy and anxious. He thought he had one. He was practically humming with excitement, checking his banking app every 5 minutes. The transfer is scheduled for 3 p.m. I told him, keeping my voice flat. Good, Kath, he stammered, his facade finally cracking with relief. You made the right choice. I knew you would understand. I understand everything, Damien, I said, looking him straight in the eye. I didn't blink. I understand you were going to throw Mom to the wolves for a cruise. I understand that the kidney surgery is a fantasy. And I understand that you no longer have any power over this situation. His face went white. The color drained from him like water out of a bucket. What are you talking about? I didn't answer. I walked past him and into the living room, where Mrs. Patterson was showing Mom photos of her grandchildren. I smiled at Mom, kissed her forehead, and then turned to my brother, who was now standing frozen in the doorway, his supposed victory dissolving into dust. The clock was ticking toward 3 p.m., and the money was about to move, but not into his account. The only question left was how he would react when he realized he had lost everything. His leverage, the money, and any claim to decency. The air in the living room was suddenly thick, vibrating with the unspoken history and the imminent explosion. Mom looked up, sensing the shift, her brow furrowing slightly at the tension radiating off Damien. Mrs. Patterson, bless her professional neutrality, continued talking softly about her garden, but her eyes flickered nervously between us. Damien took one step toward me. His face twisted into a mask of confusion and rising panic. What did you do, Kate? What the hell are you talking about? The money, it's going to my account, right? Tell me it is. I met his gaze, my own eyes probably reflecting the cold resolve of the past few days. The money moved, Damien. It moved exactly at 3 p.m. but not to your account. I motioned toward Mrs. Patterson, who gave a small, polite nod. This is Mrs. Patterson. She is Mom's full-time living caregiver starting now. I paid her first month's salary today. The rest of the funds, all $30,000, are now in a permanent irrevocable trust fund, set up under Mom's name. The money is secured for her care for the next several years. The realization hit him like a physical blow. His jaw dropped. He looked from me to Mrs. Patterson, and then his eyes landed on Mom, who was watching us with increasing distress. The knowledge that his leverage was gone, that his sophisticated lie had failed, shattered him instantly. He lunged at me, not physically but verbally. You bitch. You ruined everything. My trip, my plan, my life. You think you're so smart? You think you won? His voice was a harsh, ugly grate, loud enough to stop Mrs. Patterson's polite chatter entirely. I won Mom's peace, I said, my voice dangerously level. You planned to abandon her, Damien. You were going to use Dad's death and her illness as a stepping stone to a cruise ship. I know about your journal. I know about the Baja deposit. I know you sold Dad's watch. The last sentence was the knife twist. He stumbled back, shaking his head rapidly. No, you don't know anything. You don't know how desperate I was. I know $40,000 is the price of a lie, I countered. But $30,000 is the price of my conscience. I used my money to ensure Mom stays right here, safe and cared for, forever removing the threat you used against me. He started shouting then, a hysterical raw scream. He accused me of being selfish, of plotting against him, of never truly loving him. He dragged every old, stale family resentment into the light, trying to wound me, to force me to argue back. But I didn't. I just stood there, letting the ugliness wash over me, feeling nothing but a profound, weary sadness. I looked at Mom. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear, and she instinctively reached out for Mrs. Patterson's hand, seeking refuge from her own son. Damien, I said, waiting for a beat of silence, you have 30 minutes to pack your things and leave this house. If you are here after that, I will call the police and show them the evidence of your extortion. He realized I was serious. He saw the cold finality in my eyes, the confirmation that this battle was over, and he had utterly lost. He didn't say another word. He just turned, ran to his room and slammed the door. 30 minutes later, I heard the squeal of his car tires leaving the driveway. He didn't say goodbye to Mom. I never saw him again after that day. He sent me one text message a week later: you took my future. I hope you're happy. I didn't reply. Mom settled quickly with Mrs. Patterson. She was safe, loved, and unaware of the full brutal extent of the war waged in her name. I had protected her, but at what cost? I had traded my entire savings, my only path to a bigger life, for a permanent silent chasm between me and my brother. I look at the zero balance on my investment account, and then I look at the peace on my mother's face. The money is gone. The stability I craved is gone. But my promise to my father, my moral backbone, that is intact. Sometimes when I'm alone in my small apartment, staring at the ceiling, I wonder about Damien. Did he ever take that cruise? Did he learn anything? Did he ever regret that cold, calculating laugh? I don't know. But I realized something profound during that brutal month. The true price of security isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in the absolute loss of illusions about the people you love. I saved Mom, but I lost my brother, and I had to accept that they were two separate, equally heavy and unchangeable truths. And that is the heaviest debt I carry.